Everybody, here is your bell ringer for the day. Please work on that. So please pause the video for a little bit, have students work on the bell ringer, and then press play and we'll go through the solution. All right, so what you want to do with these is you want to start by factoring everything as much as we can. So let's take this one. Let's take this one right here and see if we can factor that first. Okay, so on the top in the numerator there, we see an x in each term. So then we want to rewrite it with that x taken out. And then let's say in the bottom, we can factor that one right away. We'll factor this stuff here again in a minute. Okay, in the bottom, you got the 2x squared plus x minus 1, so we're going to have a 2x and an x in the front, and then a 1 and a 1 in the back. And then we'll have to figure out how we get that middle term of just an x up there. All right, so we're going to have a positive 2, which we have that there, and a negative 1 when we check our smile there. Okay, so let's factor this one right here. So that's going to be a 3 and a 2 in the front, so 3x, and then 2x, and a 1 in the back. We're looking for a negative 1 in the middle, so we'd have a positive 2x and a negative 3x. So let's swap those out here quick. All right, so let's get rid of that one, and we'll put this one in its place. Okay, so we have that right there for my first one. And then let me just extend that a little bit. Let's write out this one. So let's factor this here. So the top is going to factor to x minus 1, x plus 1. That's difference of squares. The bottom, I'll just factor it right below there. We're going to have x out front, x squared minus 2x plus 1. And then factor that. So we're going to have an x, and then we'll have x minus 1, x minus 1. And since we're multiplying, then we can just kind of think about everything on top and everything on bottom and just start canceling as we see it. So I see a 2x minus 1 there and there, so those will cancel out. X plus 1 there and there, x minus 1 there and there. And then we have those x's out in front, so we can cancel those out as well. So then we just write out what we have left. So we have a 3x plus 1 on top, and we have an x minus 1 on the bottom. So that looks like that's what we have left. So that would be simplifying the rational expressions here, simplifying the multiplication problem. Okay? So now I want you guys to take out your homework. I want you to take about 5 minutes to look through those. If you don't have it done, you can work on it for 5 minutes. But compare answers at your pods. So pause the video, give them about 5 minutes to look through their homework, and then start up the video again after they turn it in. Okay, so today's lesson, we're working more with rational expressions. So we did simplification, multiplication, and division. So now we're going to work on subtraction and addition. Okay, so we're going to be able to add and subtract with common denominators, find the least common denominator, and then we're going to add and subtract expressions with unlike denominators. So, I kind of said this quite a bit, but review. What do we need to do? When we add and subtract fractions, you must find what? We've done this a lot in this class, just with normal fractions. So what do we got to do? Find common denominators, okay? So we're going to start out when we have common denominators. So the first problem here, go ahead and write that down. And if you ever need the sub to pause the video, that way you can write it down. You can ask them to pause the video quick. So we are subtracting here. We got a subtraction sign in the middle, right? So that little guy right there, that means subtraction. So first we got to look at the denominator, the bottom. Do we have the same thing in the bottom? We do. We're good to go. All right? So that means when we have common denominators, we are subtracting across the top. So we're just going to do x minus the stuff on top there. And so remember, when we're subtracting a whole group like that, it's essentially in parentheses like that. So what you want to do is take that negative and distribute it through that whole polynomial up there. All right, so I'm just going to rewrite that out. So I got x minus x squared minus 2x plus 6, because I'm just distributing that negative through there. And then our common denominator that we're going to have, we got that x plus 3 on the bottom, so that's my common denominator. We don't touch the denominator when you're adding or subtracting, right? Because if I had, let's say we got 1/4 plus 3/4. Well, that's 1, obviously. But you'd have 1 plus 4, 4/4. You didn't touch the bottom, right? So the common denominator stays the same. It is a common denominator and it stays as 1. Okay, so we just need to simplify the numerator up here. Simplify the stuff on top. So we have a negative x squared. Remember, we want to write it in decreasing order of the exponents. And then we're going to have x minus 2x. So that'd be a minus x. And then plus 6 over x plus 3. Okay? So we simplified that down with subtraction. And now, before you're done, you want to see if anything factors out, just like we did in the last lesson. So see if you can factor and cancel anything. So in the top here, we can take out a negative, and then that will give us x squared plus x minus 6 over x plus 3. Okay, so let's see if this factors. Does that factor? Two numbers that multiply to give you a negative 6 and add to give you a positive 1. Well, that would be a positive 3 and a negative 2. So let's do that. So negative stays in front, x plus 3, x minus 2, and that's all over x plus 3. So now do you see something that cancels out to simplify this expression? I see an x plus 3 in the numerator and denominator, so now all I have left is a negative and an x minus 2. So I'm going to multiply that through there to give you that. So when I subtract those two expressions, I get a negative x plus 2. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. The common goal here is to subtract across the top when you have common denominators, and then when you do that, you should be able to factor stuff. Not always can you factor, but you want to double check to see if you can or can't factor to simplify in the end. So, second problem here. We got 5m plus 2n. Ask yourself, do you have a common denominator? Not really. So let's kind of think of the way we did it with fractions before. So 1/3 plus 1/2. Well, you can't add across the top because you don't have a common denominator. What would be my common denominator here? Well, I need a 6, okay, because 2 and 3 both go into 6. That's my least common denominator. So we take top and bottom times a 2 here, and top and bottom times a 3 here. Okay, so then this one turns into 2/6, and then this one turns into 3/6. So 2/6 plus 3/6 is 5/6. That's addition of two fractions. You learn that in like 5th and 6th grade. Okay, so now we're using rational expressions, which you actually did in Algebra 1. Okay, but we have a m there and an n there. So it works a little bit differently than numbers, but if you think you got an m and an n, well, here we had a 3 and a 2. So what did we have to do to get both of them, or to get a 6 in the bottom? You had to multiply by both of them. So that means over here we're going to have to times by an n, and over here we're going to have to multiply by an m, because we need both an m and an n in the bottom. Okay, so this would give me 5n over mn. This would give me 2m over mn, and you always want to write it in alphabetical order. Okay, so then do we have common denominators here and here? We do, so let's just add across the top. So we got 5n plus 2m, and I should probably write that around the other way. So the m comes first. 2m plus 5n over mn. And then you would just leave it as that. Okay? You can't factor that one anymore. It's just a one-step problem. So as soon as you get them combined, you are done. Okay? So let's look at another one. Kind of similar to that. We had x plus 3 over x minus 6 minus x plus 1 over x plus 6. Okay, take a little bit to write it down, and then we'll work through it. So looking here, when you look at these right here, these are binomials. So that would be a polynomial of two terms. You want to kind of treat those as a group, okay, by itself. So that would be like thinking of this as a whole, that you have to just have that. All right, so if I'm looking at the bottom, I have x minus 6 in one of them and then x plus 6 in the other one. All right, so just like in the last one, I'm going to need one of each of those down there. So I'm going to have an x plus 6 down there too. Okay, so if I multiply the bottom by an x plus 6, I've got to do the top by an x plus 6. Over here, we're going to have to do an x minus 6. All right? Then this problem kind of blows up from there. We got our common denominator already, but we're going to have to FOIL out the top here. So that's like in parentheses. And we're going to have to FOIL out the top here. And then you're going to subtract those. Okay? So let's write that down here. So FOILing it out. So x squared plus 6x plus 3x plus 18. All right, so that one simplifies down to x squared plus 9x plus 18. That's the one on the left. This one, let's FOIL it out. X squared minus 6x plus x minus 6. Hopefully I shouldn't have to go as slow on those, because we've done a handful of them. So this one simplifies down to x squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay, so this is the numerator on the left. This is the numerator on the right. Our common denominator is x plus 6, x minus 6. And we don't have to worry about multiplying out the bottom, because that stays that way. And it may cancel out in the end. So we're subtracting. So just like the first problem, that negative goes to the whole polynomial on the right. So we're going to have x squared minus x squared. That goes away. All right. And then we're going to have 9x minus a negative 5x, which would turn that to a plus 5x. So that'll give us 14x. And then we'll have an 18 minus a negative 6. So that would be 18 plus 6, which gives you a 24. Okay, so that's what our top simplifies down to. If you want me to, I can rewrite everything over here, which I will. So x squared plus 9x plus 18, and I'm subtracting x squared, 5x, and 6. So that's what we simplified to get the numerator on the new one. So we have the top that's simplified to 14x plus 24. And then our denominator there is still x plus 6, x minus 6. Remember, once we find that common denominator, we don't do anything with it. We just kind of write it down below our numerator. Okay, so we do need to see if we can factor anything when we're done. So let's do that. So we can take out first of all, we want to see if we can factor to help us out at all. If it doesn't factor, then we just kind of leave it. So we get a 14 and a 24, so that means they're both even, so we can take a 2 out. So we get a 7x plus 12, which really didn't help us out much, so we could have just left it as what we had before. But just to get into a good habit, we're going to factor everything, okay? So that's number 3. Those take a little bit more work once we start getting to those, all right? So those, we had unlike denominators, so we had to find it. So that's going to lead into this one, okay? So we're going to talk again. Steps to add and subtract rational expressions with unlike denominators. So first thing we got to do is find a least common denominator. So that's kind of what we did in the last 2 problems. We found a least common denominator. They're fairly simple just to find the denominators, because you need one of each of the things that were in the bottom. Okay? Number 2, rewrite each fraction of the equivalent fraction with the new least common denominator. So that's our second step, which just means find the common denominator, multiply top and bottom by the number or polynomial or whatever you need to get the common denominator. Okay, so that just says rewrite it after you find that. Step 3, simplify the numerators. Okay, so multiply out the top, simplify the top of the fractions. Step 4, add and subtract, add or subtract numerators, so that just means combine like terms only across the top. Okay, and then step 5, if possible, reduce the solution by factoring. Okay, so these are pretty much the steps to finding or simplifying with addition subtraction for rational expressions. Okay, so you can kind of paraphrase these like I was, but they're fairly straightforward as they're written here. Okay, so go ahead and write those down, and we'll kind of follow those in the next problem here. So number 4, what we're going to have to do here. So the problems before were kind of simplified. They're already factored out. So what we're going to have to do here is factor as much as we can in our denominators. Okay, so this is a subtraction problem. You're going to have to find a common denominator, so we have to factor the bottom before we can find our common denominator. So this one right here, let's factor that out. And I'm just going to write it right underneath that where I have it circled. So we're going to have a 3x and an x in the front, right, because that's a 3 and a 1. And then the back, remember our combinations, we could have an 8 and a 1 or a 4 and a 2. More than likely, you're going to have a 4 and a 2. Okay? So think of where I can put the 4 or the 2. If I put a 4 here, that's going to give me 12 when I check it. So I don't want the 4 there. I want the 4 over here. Okay? So that means my 2 has got to go here. So then if I check it, oops, not a 3. That would give me a 6x. Okay? So we'll have a 6x and a 4x. Can I use a 6 and a 4 to get a negative 2? Yeah, I've got to have a negative 6, positive 4. So that's what that one factors to in the bottom. So let's factor the second one. And then hopefully we kind of see what we need to do. So this one, taking a little bit faster. So 2x, x. I'm going to have a 3 and a 2 for the 6 in the back. I want a negative there, positive there, because that would give me a negative 4 and a positive 3 when I check it, which gives a negative 1 in the center. Okay, so that's this one factored out. Now you're going to look at these two fractions, and we're going to see what we need to multiply by to get it to be the same. So look at the two of them, and then see if you can figure out what we need in each one of these to multiply it out or get that equivalent fraction. Okay? Well, we got an x minus 2 that's the same here and here, so that's good to go. And then look at the other one. We got a 3x plus 4. We don't got one of those over here, so we need one. Sorry, we don't have one. Okay, we don't have one of those over there. So over here we got a 2x plus 3, but we don't have one of those in the left here. So let's put one of those over here. And then you're going to have to FOIL out across the top. Okay, so the top, this one over here, FOIL it out. We're going to get 4x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 3. Okay, and then we're going to multiply the second one out here. Okay, so this, I'm going to write that negative down here. I'm going to write that in parentheses so we can kind of see that. We're going to have a 9x squared, and then plus 12x minus 6x minus 8. Okay, that's just foiling that one out. So the next step, I'm going to simplify the numerators in both of these, and I'm just going to rewrite the denominator down below it. So the one on the left here, that's going to simplify to a 4x squared plus 8x plus 3. And then the one on the right here, I'll just kind of simplify where it is. In the center here, we're just going to have a 6x. So the subtraction sign would multiply through, changing my sign. So minus 9x squared minus 6x plus 8. So right now, I am just multiplying and simplifying the numerator. So after I simplified the top in both of those, the subtraction sign kind of takes over, just working in the top here. So simplifying this whole thing down, that's just going to be the numerator of the fraction. So we will have 4x minus 9x, or sorry, 4x squared minus 9x squared, the negative 5x squared, 8x minus 6x, the negative 2x, 3 and 8, so 3 plus 8, that's 11. So that's the numerator, and my denominator is going to be those three, because whatever I needed to use to get those equivalent fractions. And the order doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to write it like I have it there. 2x plus 3, 3x plus 4, and then x minus 2. Okay, so then you look at it to see if you can factor it at all. Okay, which doesn't really look like we can do much with that, because 5 is prime and 11 is prime, so from there we are done. Okay, so it's kind of an ugly answer. You end up with that sometime. But let's just kind of go with that and see if the next one factors out nice. So here we got 3 fractions. I think this might be the last one to take care of. We got 3 fractions. So step 1 is to factor what you can, which this is the only one that we can factor. So that gives us x minus 1, x plus 1. That's the difference of squares pattern. So that's going to be what we have to get in the bottom. We have to have an x minus 1 and an x plus 1 in the bottom. So in this one here, we're missing an x minus 1. The middle one, we're good to go. Over here, we need an x plus 1. All right, so we need to FOIL everything out. So let's take this one down and FOIL it out. So the top will FOIL to x squared plus 3x minus 1x, so it's plus 2x minus 3. That's the numerator there. This one here, we're just going to rewrite out because we didn't have to do any FOILing in the top. And then this one here, so we're going to multiply this one out. This is going to give us, and I will FOIL the top there and rewrite it down below. So it'd be x squared plus 1x plus 4x, so it's plus 5x plus 4. So since we're subtracting, that goes into that. So minus x squared minus 5x minus 4. So again, what I have written here, that's just the numerator. That's the stuff on top that we were working with, okay? So you want to simplify the numerator, and then we can just kind of rewrite the denominator. So x squared minus x squared, so those are gone. That's kind of nice. We got a 2x, an x, and a negative 5x. So 2x plus x here is 3x minus 5x is negative 2x. And then negative 3 minus 3, that's a negative 6, minus 4 is a negative 10. Okay, so that's what the numerator simplifies down to. And then we just rewrite the denominator. So x minus 1, x plus 1. So this one is another one that kind of looks like it's not going to factor out very well. So we just leave that as the answer. Okay. Hopefully we kind of followed along on those. The goal is to factor if you can at first, and then get a common denominator and add or subtract across the top of the fractions. Okay. And once you find your common denominator, it stays the same. All right. So here is your homework. We're probably going to work on this again the next time we have class. Okay, and if you need some more help, then you can go to YouTube, or you can go to Khan Academy. They are really helpful. If you didn't have, today's video was not enough, those are really helpful. You're going to search, add, subtract, rational expressions. Okay, so this video will be in Google Classroom as well, so that way you can watch it again. It's on my YouTube channel. I don't have any ads on there, so you don't have to waste time looking at ads. But you can search YouTube or Khan Academy also if you need some extra help. Okay, well, good luck.